Hello and welcome to the Time for AI podcast, the podcast that brings you the best AI conference speakers and allows them to sum up their presentations in 5 minutes. My name is Peter and I'll be the host of this episode. As for every previous episode, go and check them out at timeforai.show or at YouTube or wherever you like to go. We are getting the best conference speakers and we get them to tell us in short what their presentation was about so that you can get the most interesting content in 5-10 minutes slots. Today with me on the podcast is Philip Keren. Philip, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Philip, you are the director of the developer relations at Elastic. Can you tell me a bit what does Elastic do, and can you tell me a bit of what you do?
Sure. So Elastic is the company behind Elasticsearch and Kibana. You have probably heard or hopefully even used our products. We've been around for a while. I think Elasticsearch had its 15th anniversary this year. And we've been doing search for a long time. And for us, many things are a search problem. So logs and observability data is kind of a search problem because you want to store data and want to find what is relevant. Same for security. It's like you want to find a threat or whatever went wrong. And then there's the classic search problem, and search is very interesting. And we'll get to that when we come to my talk. But that is kind of like what we do in terms of company and products. And developer relations, since developers are kind of like in the driving seat for many products and product decisions. Our role is really to make sure that, I always say my North Star is making you successful with our products. And making you successful could be showing you what is possible or what is new, or giving you a blog post or a video and helping you get things done. And we also spend a fair amount of time helping people on Reddit, our community Slack, our discussion forum. If you get stuck, to actually help you out and get you going. So our North Star is make you successful with our products, and then everybody wins.
So generally, the idea is there is any functionality that no one uses doesn't really exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we have, since we've been doing this for such a long time, we have a very large API surface, which is great for developers, but it can also be confusing. So yes, we have seen all kinds of things, many times used the way we would expect them to be used, sometimes not the way we would expect them to be used, which sometimes works surprisingly well and sometimes doesn't. And then we try to nudge people in the right direction. But yeah, the overall idea is that we help you with our products, and then I don't have to sell anything because we have a cloud service, or maybe your company decides that you want some additional features or support. So my goal is to make you successful, because successful users might turn into paying customers at the end of the day. But luckily, I don't have to do any of that motion. I just work to make you successful with our products.
Okay. I've invited you to the podcast because you had a presentations at the AI Engineers World's Fair in San Francisco. How was the conference? Was this the first time you were at the conference?
No, I was there last year already. Last year was good and busy. This year was even busier. I think it was almost too busy. Like the running joke at the event was that the Wi-Fi couldn't keep up with what was going on. So it was almost offline. It was very much an in-person conference because people wouldn't stare so much on their phones because the network wasn't working that well, which was good. But it was very buzzwordy, and lots of people who have interesting ideas in the AI space were there. So I feel like this year is the year of MCP and AI agents. So it was all around that. And then our specific take is like what I did in my talk is the information retrieval side. That I think it was like a 2-hour workshop or something like that, which was more a hands-on demo to some degree, because again, the Wi-Fi was not great. So for many people, it turned out more into a demo. But the thing is with all the LLM power that we have, and then retrieval augmented generation, RAG, search suddenly got interesting and exciting, and suddenly had a budget again. But the thing that many of us forget, especially if you haven't been around for as many years as the two of us probably, is that search is not a new problem. And there was a world or a time before vector search. And like this field is generally decades old, which is generally information retrieval. So I always say that RAG, retrieval augmented generation, it's retrieval for a reason. It's not just vector search, it's not just keyword search, it's really retrieval. So it's the full spectrum of what you could get in terms of finding what is relevant for you. And it includes pretty much any technique from the newer vector search, like either dense or sparse searches, keyword search, which is very solid and tried and tested, and is just a very good baseline. The combination of all of those in hybrid search, or if you have other features to allow you for better ranking, all of that makes up information retrieval. Because at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to find the most relevant or important context, and you want to provide that to the LLM to give you the best possible answer. And the LLMs then also play into all of this, because like an LLM could do query rewriting, like you ask a question and then the LLM figures out the better way to ask the question. I think sometimes in this RAG space, we got almost too focused on just generating the output, but the LLMs have a function like almost all over the place. So one of my favorite examples to explain that, like pretty much everybody knows RAG, where it's like, oh, you retrieve the context and then you generate the answer. So rather than reading a full page, it will just give you 3 sentences of what you're looking for. That is RAG, and we all know that and have seen that. What I think is interesting is that the LLM can come in other places. So for example, let's say you're looking for a recipe, and then you say like, oh, I'm looking for this dish, but I forgot what the dish is called. And then you describe the dish, and then the LLM could, for example, figure out like, oh, you're looking for lasagna. Because you forgot the name, but you could describe lasagna and the LLM could tell you. And then you actually look up the recipe for lasagna, and you might not need the LLM to kind of like rephrase the lasagna recipe because you just want the recipe. So you don't really do the generation at the end, but you can do the LLM or generational part at the beginning or in the middle or wherever. Like there's a lot of new things that you can do in this entire information retrieval space. But my core point is, this is still a continuation of what we have been doing for decades, and there's a lot of things that we keep doing, and you shouldn't forget those. But there are a lot of new and exciting things coming on top of that, like the more expressive query rewriting, the generation of answers. All of that plays into that information retrieval space, and we can move forward on that. And it's exciting because suddenly there is interest, there's new research, and there's budget for these projects, because search was always there and search was never solved, and search is still not solved, and it's probably not a solvable problem. But suddenly people think more about search again. And since we are a search company, we find that very exciting, of course.
How do you see the role of traditional keyword search evolving as vector search and hybrid approaches become more prevalent?
Keyword search is cheap, well understood, very simple. It's also a very strong baseline, actually, and it depends a bit on like how your users are searching for something. If I go to an online store and I say Levi's jeans, keyword search will do a very good job because they will just pull up the right product.
Right.
Vector search will not be able to do a better job because they might not even represent that exact dimension, basically. And you can't add so much value on top of that query, because it's like, maybe you have selected, okay, this is my gender and this is maybe my size. And then you say Levi's jeans, and then it shows you the 20 models or whatever it has. Keyword search will be very hard to beat there. On the other hand, if you approach search differently, if you say like, I don't know, my Halloween party is coming up and I'm thinking about this, give me some suggestions for a costume. There an LLM will have a lot more options to help you out. So I think it depends a bit on like the specific question. For some questions, keyword search will be hard to beat or like is doing a good job. For many other things, for the Halloween problem, keyword search is probably not going to do a great job today. Or it's just not the right domain for that. So we'll need to keep evolving that. And I mean, that is just one e-commerce example, but it's like how we treat information, especially inside an organization where it feels like sometimes the hardest problem is finding data inside a company. Even at Elastic, even though we're a search company, finding the right stuff can sometimes be tricky. Even though we're also trying to productize that a bit more. So there are a lot of things where classic keyword search will have a limit of how far it gets. It is a good baseline and gets you very far, but you can do better or you can augment that. And then these other techniques will come into play.
And it seems that, Google and other search engines have kind of trained people to move away from keyword search into descriptive searches, right? My past was in search engine optimization, and I feel that 10 years ago we were using keywords when searching. Now people are using, sentences when searching. So it comes back to, of course, you can use keyword retrieval keyword search if people are using the traditional way, but people are mostly already used to describing their problem, and then that's the keyword is probably not the best way of how to get the results when people are searching in such a way, right?
Right. I think it depends a bit. Like if you have like a large enough search box, maybe you can nudge people towards that. Sometimes I feel like if the search box is very small, people will still go very much the old keyword approach, and then like they enter one keyword, and if it doesn't work, they rephrase it or pick a synonym and see if that works. So I feel like we've also been trained for that for a long time, and semantic search is not as ubiquitous or like everywhere available yet. So I feel like we're in this maybe transition phase. Maybe it would always be like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's great that we start having these additional tools so we can actually make progress on our search problems.
All right, that was a great summation of what you were talking about. What was really interesting, what I think is really interesting, is the idea that you mentioned how people try to use AI too much or to solve all of the problems also in search, right? As you said, very often we don't need AI to do things like that. To do things in search, we can go and use the traditional ways of searching for things in the databases or whatever we want to do. But on the other hand, as you've mentioned, new money is coming in because AI is such a buzzword. How do you approach? And I mean, how should people approach? I'm in a company, the boss wants AI, but I know that AI is not a solution. How do we do that?
Tricky question since we were heavily invested into AI. But it does remind me, I remember like 2 years ago or so, I was talking to some big German e-commerce store, and like they had these big projects around like using LLMs, and like their management was pushing much harder than the engineering side to use the LLMs. So it is a problem that people want to do that. And I think there's a good reason for that, by the way. When we talked initially, like 2 or 3 years ago, to many of our customers, they were like, we might not want to use this specific thing with an LLM tomorrow, but we want to see that you as a company work on that and you're fast enough to pick up new things, and that you also can deliver on them, because that is more like the thing to future-proof something, even if it might not go to production tomorrow. So I think it's sometimes good to remember that, like, looking into AI features, it might not mean that this is the right thing to put to production tomorrow. But it is important to keep an eye on that and be there with the trend. I mean, cycles are moving slowly. I think sometimes we're a bit too overexcited, and sometimes people think like, oh, we're missing 3 weeks and then we're history and everything is over and we're so much behind, we'll never catch up. I don't think that's quite true. Like, this has been going on for a while and is still evolving. On the other hand, it is important to see like, to stay current with the tools and then use them to their potential or find a good use. For me, it's a bit like saying, I don't know, when IDEs came up, a lot of people were like, oh, my trusted text editor, I can do everything. This new IDE thing is just like a distraction. And at this point, many people have decided, well, IDEs are helpful. They also have limitations, so you need to use them the right way. But the same way AI and LLMs are for code generation, for understanding things, for adding context. Like, there are many things that are interesting. We'll just need to be curious, try them out, and then figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's fine to say we're honest and like, this is not working or not the way it is working that we expected it to be. But I think you still need to be curious and always push to see if you can't use it for something.
For companies who would like to use who would like to use Elastic tools in their workflows, what is the first step to think about, and what is the first point of contact that they should use?
I mean, we're an open source product. You just download us and you run us. So I think if you want to use our products, there are two easy ways to get going. One is something we call start local, which is basically a curl command which will pull Docker images, start everything, and it will just run on your local machine.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have a free trial for our cloud service, so you could also sign up for that and get started. And once you have kind of like the infrastructure set up, that's a necessary part, but I want to say almost the boring part. Then the next step that is very important, and you need to get that right, is like getting the data in, or the relevant data in, and you shouldn't get stuck on that. So for example, we have Kibana, our UI tool, has a way to upload PDFs. So you have like some text formats. So you can just basically drag and drop the data in, and then you can start working and start doing the interesting stuff. Because starting a cluster and pulling data in, absolutely necessary. You won't get anywhere without that. But I think the actually exciting stuff is normally a bit later, when you get value out of that and see what you can do. So for example, we have a playground where you can connect an LLM, and then you can do RAG write in Kibana in your browser without writing a single line of code. And you can even export the code afterwards.
Okay, so generally start playing with your with the local system, and then of course set everything up, and then it's the easiest way to go. What is the future of retrieval in AI?
I mean, I think the future is always hard to predict. We'll see how well this will age.
Okay.
So I think we've been doing classic search, like keyword search, for over a decade. And then vector search suddenly popped up, and we have invested heavily into vector search. But it's still kind of early days. Like, we've had some massive performance improvements just in the last couple of months. So, for example, one thing, dense vector representation, especially if you have many dimensions, has been historically relatively expensive. So the two optimizations that we've recently added, one is binary quantization, or we call it better binary quantization, or BBQ, like the barbecue meat that you can eat. So you can compress your data to get a lot more value out of this. And we have a similar thing that we call disk BBQ, to push that more to disk rather than memory. So from a vector store perspective, there is still a lot in terms of like the performance and what we're learning around that. That is one side. The other side around that is like, this year everything is about MCP and AI agents. So I think the ecosystem around that is also still moving. But the general problem of information retrieval and adding the right context and having that, it is evolving. But that is almost like a constant in this, and like the specific approaches around it keep changing and adding. And I don't really expect that to change. Like, we will learn smarter ways to use the data. We will find more efficient ways to work with it. But the general idea of like, you have something and you want to find the most relevant thing, that is a problem that is not easy to solve, and probably never solve it really. And that's not going away. So that will be our problem in the future as well.
Yeah. I mean, my father still names files with 8 characters because this is how he learned 50 years ago, right? And he just can't go away from that.
The 8.3 basically DOS filing or naming conventions.
Yeah. All right. Philip, if people want to talk to you more about how to get and retrieve information, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my online handle is slightly weird. If you take my last name and do a rot13, where you rotate the letters by 13, this is how you find me on Twitter, on GitHub, on my website, everywhere. So it's XERAA. That's how you normally find me. It's relatively unique. And yeah, if you're wondering where it comes from, if you take my last name and rotate the letters by 13, that's what you get. That's how to find me.
Okay, well, put the links to the show notes so it's going to be easier, and that's also described on your website. Philip, thank you very much for one more question. Do you have any future conferences planned where you know that you'll be speaking?
I'm not sure right now. So since I have a larger team, I need to outsource the speaking more to my team at this point. Or I try not to do too much myself because I need to spend my time elsewhere. So I don't have anything planned right now, but maybe something will pop up. Sometimes I don't want to say I feel bored, but every now and then I feel the urge to get out a bit again. So maybe I feel like my speaking heydays are slightly over. Before COVID, I was doing like 200 travel days every year to go to conferences. But that was past me. Current me has to stay a bit more home to take care of other things.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the podcast. And I hope to see you at the next conference. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.